Hi, good day, and welcome to today's lesson. We are learning about the poem Rejection by Mariama. We are learning about the short story of Rejection by Mariama Bâ. Come and join us, like and subscribe as well if you are interested for watching more videos after this. So, who is Mariama Bâ? Well, she was born on 17th of April 1929 in Dakar, Senegal, and died on the 17th of August in 1981. She was a Senegalese writer, teacher, and feminist. She was raised in a Muslim family. So basically, a feminist in this case is someone who believes in women's rights. So she was obviously a fierce teacher in making sure that women were heard. And on this PowerPoint over here, I do have a little image of where Senegal is. So obviously we know where South Africa is because we live at the bottom of Africa. So over here, we're up in the north, just about in Africa. There is a place called Senegal, and a little bit closer, there'll be a place called Dakar. Mariama Bâ wrote 2 novels in French. These books became very popular and were translated into several different languages. Her first big novel was So Long a Letter. This was published in about 1979, and in this book she shows how an African woman were often treated unfairly. She wrote about the problems such as patriarchy, polygamy, and traditions that made life difficult for women. If we are worried about one of the things in the stories, I want you to work on polygamy, because that means more than one wife or more than one partner that you are married into as a family. Traditions, following your religion or your culture, and patriarchy, listen to the people above you, so to speak. Through her writing, Mariama Bâ wanted people to understand the struggles women faced and to think about the fairness and equality of how women had to survive through all of this. What I would like you guys to do, if not you want to pause this video now, you can go and look at the 2 links at the bottom, but I would like you to go and research about the Islamic religion in order to understand a little bit more about this story. The general idea I can give you right now is Islam is a major world religion. People who follow Islam are called Muslims, and Muslims believe in one God called Allah, and they follow the teachings of the Quran. In Islam, family is extremely important. Marriage is a serious commitment where both husband and wife have their own responsibilities towards each other. These responsibilities include kindness, respect, honesty, and support. Some Muslim communities, traditions, and religious teachings can influence the roles of men and women in the marriage and in the family life. However, people may understand and practice these teachings in different ways. This story is important to remember that Mariama Bâ is writing about women's experiences in society shaped by religion, culture, patriarchy, and polygamy. She shows how women are felt hurt and treated unfairly when men have more power in the family and make all the marriage decisions. I really strongly recommend that you guys Google about the relationships of husband and wives and their responsibilities in a marriage in the Islamic religion. It will definitely help you understand more of the story. So, in summary of the story, the narrator is a Muslim wife and a mother. She takes care of her home and supports her children's education. She is kind and welcoming. She allows her daughter, Daba, friend, to come and study at their place. This friend of Daba's is a very beautiful young girl, and her name is Benito. If I've pronounced this name incorrectly, I do apologize. I am going by the idea of how it's pronounced in my English language. The narrator's husband, Maudu, starts showing interest in Benito. Sometimes he even gives her lifts home after she studies at their home. So Daba and Benito are very close friends. Benito trusts Daba and tells her personal things. When Benito starts wearing expensive and lavish clothing, she explains that she has a sugar daddy, or also known as a blesser. This means an older man is buying her gifts and giving her money. Later, the situation becomes very serious and a completely different story. The older man wants to now marry Benito, and the narrator and Daba advise Benito not to marry because she will have to now leave school. So meaning she will have to stop her education and she won't be able to finish it. However, Benito's mother wants her to accept the marriage. She hopes the rich man will give them a better life and a proper home. Benito is not happy about the marriage, but she gives in because her mother puts pressure on her. So meaning Benito's mother puts pressure on her, and she accepts the idea of that she's going to have to get married, especially because it might mean that they get to live in a more prosperous home or a safer environment. Later, 3 men visit the manor being the narrator's home. They are Tamsir, who is Maudu's brother, older brother we'll figure out later, Mariama Bâ, and a local Muslim spiritual leader. They tell the narrator that her husband, Maudu, has now decided to take a second wife being Benito. The narrator is shocked because nobody warned her about this. Even though she is hurt, she decides to stay calm and control her emotions in that moment. After Maudu dies, the 3 men visit the narrator again after 40 days. How the husband has passed on, we do not know. And in the religion, the wife usually should be given time to mourn her husband 40 days, 40 days basically. So a month and 10 days. They come for a spiritual visit during the mourning period. During this, Tamsir says, remember Tamsir is the brother, the older brother of Maudu, that he wants to marry the narrator when her mourning period is over. So after her 40, 50 days, okay, now she gets to be remarried and takes all her husband's possessions. This time the narrator decides not to stay quiet. She decides to stand up for herself and rejects Tamsir in front of the other men. This is important in this turning point of this narrator's life. She finally speaks out, shows her anger by rejecting Tamsir, and she proves that no one can bully her or control her life anymore. So let's now analyze the title. Rejection in this case means saying no to an idea or offer or proposal. In the story, the narrator rejects the idea of marrying her late husband's brother, older brother, Tamsir. This is important because for most of the story, men try to make the decisions all for her. By saying no, the narrator shows that she has her own voice to speak up. She stands up for herself and takes back the control of her life. Her rejection is powerful because it shows that she no longer allows patriarchal society to control her choices. A patriarchal society is a society where men usually have more power than women. Themes that you guys need to realize and memorize for your exams. Theme 1 is the culture and religion that is found in the story. The narrator is a Muslim wife. She tries to follow the culture and religious rules of her society with her due diligence. At first, she's happy because Maudu's the only wife, and how everything changes when Maudu decides to take a second wife without speaking to the first wife, the narrator in this case. And now the narrator feels unhappy and deeply hurt because, well, I guess in our language, that's a form of cheating. This theme is also shown when Tamsir says he wants to marry the narrator after Maudu dies. He does this on the 40th day of mourning, which is a very important time after the death of a person. This shows that he does not respect her feelings or her grief at all. I've missed the paragraph above. She is also expected to pretend that she is happy and accept her younger second wife. Very younger second wife, by the way. Her feelings are not taken seriously by her or her husband or his family at all. The second theme is a broken relationship. Actually, more than one in this case. There were several that were damaged and will not be able to be repaired. The narrator's relationship between her husband, Maudu, and her were broken. And also think of it like this. Daba's friendship with Benito was also broken, as Benito was Daba's close friend, but then she becomes Daba's father's second wife. This makes Benito Daba's stepmother. That feels awkward, having your best friend as your stepmother. That feels very freaky. Either way, that's painful and embarrassing to Daba. I can understand that from anybody's perspective. The family expects the narrator just to accept everything and not complain at all. The narrator's relationship with her in-laws is also damaged when she refuses to marry Tamsir after Madhu's death. The next theme is betrayal, which is extremely important in this story. The narrator feels betrayed by her husband. Well, we're going to call it cheating. And he takes a second wife without speaking to her first. So in the culture, they are allowed to take a second wife, but it would have been nice for the narrator to have been given choice. She is expected just to accept his decision without question. Daba also feels betrayed by Benito. Benito was a close friend of hers, and she became now second wife. Both the narrator and Daba feel very hurt because they welcomed Benito into their home, who they trusted, and she came to study there, but later she becomes part of the family, not in the way that was wanted. This, of course, happened in a very painful and shocking way. Next theme is gender inequality, patriarchy, and abuse. Now, the abuse is not the form of a physical form in this case. This is more of a form of the husband has all the power and decision-making that we're talking about. This is not the same as physical abuse. Make sure you understand that. The story shows how men often have more power than women in society. Men like Madhu and Tamsir make these huge decisions without speaking to the woman, even though the women are affected by those decisions. They treat women as if their feelings just don't matter. Madhu does not show her respect for the narrator when he marries the second wife without telling her. He also takes advantage of Benito, who is still very, very young, and making her his second wife. Benito's mother also puts pressure on her daughter to marry Madhu. She wants Benito to marry him because he is rich and can give them a better life. This is unfair to Benito because she does not really want to marry him, because she was wanting to study. But now she felt emotionally blackmailed, which is kind of a form of abuse, to accept it. This theme shows how women and girls can be controlled by men, family, pressure, and society. How was this story told? Well, the setting in this case, it took place in Senegal, Dakar, and most of the events were at the narrator's home. The structure and plot development? Well, in this exposition, the story begins with the narrator saying, "My own crisis came." This tells us that something serious has happened in her life before. Or in this case, when you do read it, you'll find it was her friend who had a crisis. And now she is now doing her own crisis. The narrator seems to be living a normal and peaceful life, and she is the wife and a mother, and she has a caring family that she absolutely adores and a lovely home. Benito is then introduced early in the story as she's Daba's classmate and often comes to the narrator's house to study. Benito is young, beautiful, but unfortunately she comes from poverty. The narrator's husband, Madhu, starts to notice her because she obviously is looking stunning. The action that is rising, Benito starts changing when she becomes more involved with an older man. She begins wearing expensive clothes and seems to have a new lifestyle. Daba tells her mother everything about Benito. She also tells her mother that Benito has a sugar daddy or a blesser, and Benito is not truly happy about her situation when we talk about the marriage in this case. But her mother, Benito's mother, wants her to marry the older man so that they can live a better life. Because of this pressure, Benito agrees to marry the older man. Crux of the story. The most shocking moment happens when all three men arrive at the narrator's home, and Tamsir, Maldo, and the local Islamic spiritual leader called an imam rocks up to the house and tell her, "Congrats, you are now the first wife and you now have a second in command." This, of course, now is a shocking news to her and her daughter. They did not even know that Benito's sugar daddy was Madhu, who is the narrator's husband in this case. Both narrator and Daba feel hurt, embarrassed, and powerless. They feel rejected and betrayed by Madhu. At the end of the story, the resolution, the narrator finally gets a chance to speak out after Madhu dies. On the 40th day of mourning, Tamsir says he wants to marry her. This makes the narrator express the anger she has been holding inside of her. She refuses Tamsir's proposal and stands up for herself. This moment solves the main crisis that began at the start of the story. The narrator decides that she will no longer accept being controlled or mistreated. She now rejects. By rejecting Tamsir, she takes back her power and independence. She shows that no man will decide her life ever again. I decided to kind of ask AI to make ideas and representations of the characters. These are not real portraits. And I did a check on AI if this was used a certain style from an artist. It said that no, it hasn't, but I must just state that it's using AI. So I'm just letting you know these pictures are AI related. Okay, these are not real. All right, so the narrator herself is a round character. This means she changes and grows during the story. At the beginning, she seems emotionally strong and happy with her life, a caring wife and mother, and looks after her home and her family. Her life changes when her husband betrays her and embarrasses her, but she tries to stay calm and brave, especially during that time where the three men had walked in. After her husband's passing, she refuses and rejects the idea of Tamsir marrying her. This shows that she is no longer willing to let men control her life, and by the end of the story, the narrator becomes more independent. She stands up for herself again and decides that she will not be bullied. This is Madhu. Madhu is the narrator's husband. He is secretive because he marries Benito without telling his wife. He also is selfish and controlling. He makes a big decision that affects the whole family without speaking to her first. Madhu rejects his wife by taking a much younger second wife. This young girl is also the daughter's classmate, which makes the situation even more painful. He uses his money and power to influence Benito's family. This is the beautiful Benito, a young and beautiful girl. She's also shy, she has poor and inexperienced. Daba's close friend and classmate. She often comes to Daba's place to study. Benito is not fully honest with Daba because she does not tell her who the sugar daddy or blesser is. She betrays Daba when she becomes Madhu's second wife, and this is painful to Daba. This is Benito's mother. Benito's mother is poor and desperate for a better life. She pressures Benito to marry Madhu so that they can have a better life. She has manipulated the situation because she uses her daughter to get herself a better life. Tamsir, the older brother, he supports Madhu's decision and follows the traditions of their society. He also is an opportunist, and this means he tries to benefit from many situations. So after his brother had passed on suddenly, Tamsir tells the narrator that he wants to marry her. He believes he's doing the right thing and does not think anything bad. This is Daba. She is the narrator's daughter, caring and supportive. She loves her mother and wants to protect her. Daba feels betrayed when her best friend Benito becomes her father's second wife, her stepmother in the end. She is angry because both her father and her friend have betrayed her, embarrassed her, and hurt her family. This is kind of the idea of what is happening in the connections with all the family. I hope you can pause and try and figure it out on yourself, but this is kind of the idea. If I've missed something, please comment below. How is the story told to us? Well, it's actually told from the narrator's point of view. The narrator is told by the main character, who, by chance, is the narrator. She is Muslim and a wife and a mother. The narrator tells us about the crisis she's going through, and the story is told from the narrator's own perspective or point of view. This means we understand the events through her thoughts and her feelings. The story is written like a letter, because it was a letter. She was writing it to her friend earlier. This makes the story feel personal, because the narrator shares her pain and anger and disappointment honestly to her friend. The style of this story was written in a formal method. We're writing a letter to our friend. This means the language that has been used is in a serious and respectful method. The writer also uses dialogue story. Dialogue is when the characters speak to each other. This means it helps us understand the characters' feelings and emotions as we're going through this. The dialogue also makes the story feel more real. Interesting, actually. We learn more about the characters through what they say and how they say it. Sometimes the writer uses contractions such as don't or can't. This makes the language sound more informal though, and natural. This happens especially when the narrator speaks to her daughter, Daba, or when she writes to her friend, Aisato. Dictation and figurative language that is found in here. Dictation, please remember, is the writer's choice of words. Mariama Bâ chooses words very carefully to show the narrator's pain, anger, and disappointment. The writer also used idiomatic expressions to make the meaning stronger. Examples include haughty lips. This means proud and arrogant lips. She suggests that someone is speaking or acting as if they are better than each other. So I would even say lifting up your chin and looking down on them. Too perfect to be honest. This suggests that something seems so perfect that it may not be true or trustworthy. And the writer also uses figures of speech that make the story more powerful. Similes are also found. Remember, these are comparing two things using the word like or as. The narrator compares her children's success at school to honors giving to her husband. She says, their success at school was my pride, just like my laurels thrown at my feet of my Lord and Master. This shows that the narrator was proud of her children's achievements, but she also felt that her husband received the praise and respect. Metaphors, also comparing two things but not using like and as. The narrator uses the words the cry of a hunted beast to describe a scared and shocked feeling when she asks the men about her husband. This shows that she is feeling trapped and afraid and helpless. The narrator also says to the imam and spoke very quickly, as if the words were glowing embers in his mouth. So, in all honesty, as if, I would probably more look at that as a simile due to the as. This means that the words were difficult or painful for him. She also says, I acquiesced under the drops of poison that were burning me. This shows how painful the news of Baldu's second marriage was. She accepted the news, but she was deeply hurt. The narrator also compares Benito to a lamb slaughtered on the altar of affluence. This means that Benito is sacrificed for her money and better lifestyle. She gives up her own happiness to please her mother. Hyperbole, which means an exaggeration, and is used to make a feeling or an idea stronger. So when the narrator says, I acquiesced under the drops of poison that were burning me, she is over-exaggerating her emotional pain. She is not really being burned by the poison, but the news felt like it, and that it was unbearable to understand. Rhetorical questions are also found in the story. They just don't need an answer. The narrator asks, but what can a child do faced with a furious mother shouting about her hunger and her thirst to live? This questions how Benito had a very little power herself in that situation. Her mother pressured Benito to marry Maldu. Benito felt that she could not refuse. Tone and mood? Well, this is the attitude or the feeling that was in the story. There was a gloomy and sad one, especially when we started off with my own crisis came. This shows that something painful has now started. These words create a gloomy mood because the reader shows that the narrator is going to explain something that is difficult and very emotional or very personal to her. Then there's angry tones. The tone becomes angry when the narrator finds out that her husband has betrayed her. And she feels betrayed by Maldu as well and rejected her for another woman, a younger one. Dab is also very angry. She is furious with her father and her friend. Then there is the cheerful and excited tone. At one point, the tone becomes very cheerful when Benito starts changing. She is no longer shy and poor like she used to be. She begins wearing expensive clothes, which obviously gives her more confidence. And this creates a bit of excitement for her. But this happiness does not last long, as the seriousness became apparent when she's expected to marry an older man. The mood that was shown here is at the beginning and in the middle of the story was sad, anger, and emotional. The reader feels pain, betrayal, and shock experienced by the narrator and Daba. At the end of the story, the mood becomes more hopeful and powerful. The narrator finally stands up for herself and refuses to marry anyone else. This makes the ending feel more positive because the narrator takes back control. Final thought of this. You have now learned in Rejection that the narrator experiences betrayal, pain, and humiliation. For a long time, other people made decisions for her without asking her how she feels about these decisions. However, at the end of the story, she finds her voice and speaks up for herself, no longer willing to be controlled by others, especially in the patriarchy. The story teaches us about the importance of self-respect, independence, and standing up for yourself. I hope this lesson has helped you understand what's happening in the storyline and what is most important for you guys to study. Have an awesome day, and please like and subscribe if you liked what you saw. Cheers for now.